Hello there, friends. Thank you so much for joining us for our virtual roundtable series here again at GlocalNet. Man, have we had such a good time with this resource. We've talked about so many things so far. If in case you've missed them, we've hit on the topics of Asian American discrimination during COVID-19 and what faith leaders can do about it. We've talked about kind of state guidelines and if you're planning on rolling out, opening up your services, what that means and how churches can plan that out. We've also hit on serving your city while social distancing, what that means and how we can go out while still respecting people and social distancing and staying safe. We've hit on how to plant your church during this type of crisis and how this crisis has done to strategy at planting churches in the future, and then rethinking success and the meaning of life and how businesses can really find meaning in their domain with their faith. So many great topics, and this one today is no different. As you probably know, May is Foster Care Awareness Month. And today we have the incredible pleasure of talking with Mitch Jolly, who's one of our GlocalNet pastors, telling his story of how God shook him on caring for orphans in foster care, and his story of his church, of how he has mobilized his church members to really make an influence with the state and with foster care initiatives. And they have an amazing story and actual practical tips of how you can do the same. So practical tips of how to build a foster care program in your church or how to support it with your state. He has some amazing tips as well. Thank you so much for joining us. Please go back and watch those episodes on glocal.net in case you missed it. And thank you for joining us today. Sign up for our newsletter at glocal.net, and also just follow us on our social channels while you're at it. We're going to continue to provide this resource and many more resources to come. So please sign up for that. Thank you so much. And here is Mitch Jolly and Pastor Bob Roberts.
Hello, I'm Bob Roberts with GlocalNet and another one of our virtual roundtables. We are so excited to have you join us today. We all know James 1:27, pure religion is what? To love and care for the what? The widows and the orphans. And that means foster care. There is not a person I know in America that is making a bigger impact in this arena than Mitch Jolly at Three Rivers Church. I've had the privilege of knowing Mitch for, maybe almost 20 years now. And he started his church, and they have just done a phenomenal job. His wife and he took in a foster child that's now their adopted child. It was a focus in their church. It became a key issue in their city. He's now worked with the governor of Georgia and many of the top leaders, even other governors across the country. No one has made a bigger impact in this field than Mitch. And this month is a whole focus across the country on foster care. So Mitch Jolly, we want to welcome you to the virtual roundtable and say thank you for coming. It's an honor to have
Thank
you.
you. Thank you, Bob. I appreciate it. It's an honor to be with you, and it's always a joy to be with you, number one, and to talk about this issue. It's a passion for us, and it's an absolute pleasure. So thanks for having me.
You bet. Before we get into it, Mitch, tell us a little bit about your church. You've got a pretty incredible story there.
Yeah. Well, December of 2001, you guys at Northwood Church commissioned us, and I still have my St. Christopher medallion you gave me, and you guys sent us off. So we came back to Rome, Georgia, my hometown, very much post-Christian South, cultural Christianity, and we planted a church. So I started my job working in the workforce in the public square, and just started gathering people, making disciples, and then we launched publicly in March of 2003. And so we're in year 18. Yes, that's right. Year 18 after leaving Northwood and being taught by you how to do this.
Well, you've done a phenomenal job, and you guys, your work around the world merits a whole conversation in and of itself. But how did you get involved in foster care?
Yeah, well, I was an educator, and so teaching in the classroom, getting to know your students and families, began to be aware that I had a large number of foster kids in my classroom. And so I'm a curious person, and so I just started digging and asking a few questions, and discovered that at the time, and that was 2005, we
Okay,
had in our county.
you just said something very important.
Right,
This was in Rome, Georgia.
right.
You're a church planter, but you're also a school teacher.
That's right. That's right. Public square.
Vocation now.
That's right. Absolutely. I mean, it put us in the place where we needed to reach people. I was one of those people. And so it put us in a place to be in the public square. And so working, teaching kids, getting to know families, and discovered this as I dug. We had a huge number of kids per capita. You know, we're a small town, 100,000 people in our entire county, and just under 100,000 people to be accurate. And we had over 500 kids in care and under 10 homes available for those kids at that time, which is insane. So we were in the top 5 of the state of Georgia in number of kids in care, and that's including Metro Atlanta counties. And so that's how we discovered there was a problem.
How did you and your wife decide to get involved personally?
Well, we at that point we decided we wanted to start addressing kids who are. I mean, you have under 10 homes for 500 kids. You start asking some questions. Where do those kids go? What happens when the state takes them into care? Well, they have to find open beds, and that can be anywhere from the county next to us all the way down to Savannah. So you have caseworkers who may have to drive a kid 5 hours away down to the coast to Savannah. And so you just find an open bed wherever you can. And so when the myriad of issues that come up as a result of that, we started doing summer camps here at Berry College for kids to get them back home, to make connections to their families, and to just have an opportunity to put some positive people into their lives. And that led us deeper into the process. And at that point, the Lord really put James 1:27 on our heart and spoke clearly to me that if I'm going to call myself a follower of Jesus, I needed to obey his word. And that was more than just doing camps and recruiting foster families, which we were doing. It was, you need to be one of them.
Was that a hard decision?
It was painful. We have 2 biological sons at the time, and we're church planter. I'm working as a school teacher. We're not making a ton of money, and this whole idea of getting another kid, and we knew from working with those kids that you're bringing dysfunction into your home. There's no such thing as a kid who's in care that doesn't have a problem. And so it was harder on me to take that step into actually bringing that into my home, bringing a child into my home that needed that kind of work. And I would say as the years have progressed, it's harder on my wife and less hard on me, because we're into teenage years now, and you're raising teenage boys, and you're continually working inside that system and that dysfunction, and there are all kinds of positive things that you're dealing with because you're dealing with them. But it was hard on me. It was a difficult decision for me, and easier for her. And then those roles have shifted over the years.
Mitch, God's really taught me a lot at that point, that, especially we pastors, we have this idea we're so sacrificial, we're so giving, and we need our space, and we need our home and our castle, and nothing needs to mess it up so we can be quiet and be close to God. But when we invited an exchange student for 7 years, he was in our family, and we've had 3 exchange students. These kids aren't even Christians, and bringing them into our home. I remember some of my friends actually asking me, well, why are you inviting non-Christians to live in your home? But I became aware, man, the home is where it's at. I mean, you want to share the gospel and live your faith. I mean, there's something about the family prayer at mealtime, or discipline, or, what's bad is when Nikki and I'd have a good old knockdown drag out. And it was a communist from Vietnam. We go, oh my gosh, what have we done?
They get to see it all, man, and you get to get down in the dirt and wallow around in the messiness of it, and the truth of the matter is that's where I wrestle with the Lord and I sometimes, well, I walk away with a limp, but it's the Lord who is gracious to give me the limp, and I'm grateful for that.
How did your church get involved in that?
Well, it's the theme of my life has been first. I have always, I can take you back to about 5 years old, and the theme of my life is go first. It's just my wiring. I will be first to do something. I'll be the first to jump off the house. I'll be the first to literally be the first to do about anything. And because we did this, and this was, this African American child is running around in our church. He's 2-year-old little kid running around, and it was just noticed. So many of the volunteers for the summer camps were coming out of our church, and they recognized that this was a challenge, and it slowly began to be the culture of our church that if you're a family and you are capable, we don't believe everybody should do it because it's a difficult thing. It's not to be entered into lightly. It's a challenge. The level of your functionality has to be greater than the dysfunction that comes in, and that's high level parenting. And so it just became the culture of our church, and it's just who we are and what we do.
Why did it grow so much? I mean, a lot of people do foster care, but I mean, right. It's been incredible, the breadth of y'all's influence. What do you attribute that to?
I'm totally convinced you used to say to us, and you still say, the resources are in the harvest. And it's easy to hear that and think finances, and finances are part of that, no doubt. But for us, the resources have been the people. As we dove into this challenge, what we began to discover was all the gifts for doing this are in the body of Christ. I mean, the reality is that this building here is ran by our president and CEO, Jeff Maurer, and his wife, Mary Margaret. They are the engine that drives this. I tag along and I talk every now and then and talk about our DNA, but these guys, that's how it spread, it's our people who take that DNA that we so thrive on, and they live it in the public square, and they're the ones that make it happen. It's their story.
What is that DNA, by the way?
That would be KDSC, Kingdom Disciple Society Church.
So tell us about that building. I mean, you look like you've got a super nice office.
This is nice. This is the Clearview because it's clear. You can see in it. This is the meeting room in the Comprehensive Care Center. So this was an elementary school in the most difficult part of our town. And so the greater number of kids in need in this community, they're right here in this community. And so the city built a new school just down the road. And so rather than tear this down, the city felt the need to try and repurpose it. So they put out what's called an RFP. And over the years, our vision had been growing. Jeff and Mary Margaret in particular wanted to see us do more than recruit parents and train parents, but wanted to get into the systemic issues and addressing the systemic challenges of foster care and adoption. And so we submitted a request to the city for the building that they actually give it to us. And nobody else submitted a request. We were the only ones. And very long story short, the city gave us this elementary school.
Wow. And y'all have redone it.
We have. We're 3 phases into completing it. And so just this past year raised $800,000 to complete through phase 3. And so where we are is a comprehensive care center, from intakes to parent visitations to reunifications, all happens in this quadrant of the building.
Wow. So there's a lot of action where we're looking.
A lot of action. That's right.
How many children will y'all serve in a year?
Right now in our city, there are 234 kids. Now we're down from way down under. That's one of the things I'm most proud of in our city is we've gone from over 500 to 234 kids, and we now have 34 homes available. So at some point in time, most of those kids will come through this building for one reason or other. Either their biological family, their foster family, or themselves will come into this building. So it can be up to that number all the way down depending on the needs for the month.
How did you wind up working with the government of Georgia? How did that happen?
Right. Well, one of the things that Jeff does so well. Jeff Maurer was at one point the second largest employer in our city. Brilliant business guy, and his wife is a PhD in biology. They're brilliant people. Jeff was connected to the city government and the state government through his work, and truly the resources are in the harvest. And so as the city saw, and if you backtrack a little bit, the city knew we had a reputation for doing a good job. I'm the Division of Family and Children's Services board chairman for our city and county, and have been in that role and on that board for, I think, 12 years now. And so we had a reputation for serving. And so that's a factor in them giving us this building. They knew we were working. They knew we were effective. And they believed we could exponentially increase that effect. And so as that reputation grew, the state of Georgia took notice because of our local representatives in the Georgia State House. Katie Dempsey and others just spoke highly of us, and it's been successful, and therefore it's received the attention of the state.
What would you say about working with government officials? Are there some things you've learned that you would say to men and women that are listening today, you keep in mind when you work with the government?
Yeah, I one of the first things that comes to mind when we're talking about working with local city and state governments is listen a lot. And I have found we were invited to the table because of our reputation, and going to the table, I learned don't talk a lot, but listen and learn and learn the people and learn the atmosphere, because only then will you have something worth contributing in the conversation, or you really look foolish if you speak when you should be quiet.
Yeah. What is the biggest miracle story you've had so far?
There's so many. I would say it's got to be this building, and not that the building encapsulates or the building describes the work. The building is just the location for crystallizing this movement that we've been involved in, because it's just unheard of that. And maybe it isn't unheard of. Maybe this is just my small part of the world, but that the federal, state, and local governments are so willing to work with a Christian organization that's so clearly about what we're about, and to grant us this building, and to say we believe in what you're doing. You've been effective here. Take it. And that's just huge, because that allowed this vision to then have a locus of being able to bring all of these needs under one roof to address this massive problem. And so the fact that this building has been given to a distinctly Christian organization by the local, state, and federal governments is miraculous to me.
That's awesome. Let me ask you this. On Sundays, do you have foster children in your services because of the families of your church involved in that?
We do. We have they're in the kids stuff. They're students in the student ministry. We have foster and adoptive kids all over the building, and that creates challenges, because they can't be photographed and all the stuff that comes with that manner of stuff. There are various security things we have to think about, and so it's such a part of our DNA, and it's so integrated and woven in that it even works through our processes.
But I would think that would be so neat for you to look out. I mean, to see what God's done in your life, and now the church, and now the community. I mean, that's got to be special.
Yeah.
When you see those little kids raising holy hell running through the church. Thank you, Jesus.
That's right. And one of them raising holy hell running through my house. Absolutely. It's a great joy. It's a constant reminder that this is something the Lord did. And it's a constant reason to praise and give thanks. It's a special thing to see. The language that comes to mind is a beautiful mess sometimes, because it's really us getting involved in the weeds of the situation and rolling around in it and coming up dirty and smiling and going, how great is this?
But Mitch, for me, forget all the writing, all the principles, all the processes and systems. The thing that's given me the greatest joy over the years are the faces. It's all those Vietnamese exchange students. It's T living with us, men with us. I mean, that's what matters to me. I mean, just seeing people that you're involved with, Yeah,
Yeah,
and because
absolutely.
I don't know, some people want to read the manual and this is how
Hmm.
get them out of the wicket machine and so much
Right.
more than that. Hey,
It
Mitch,
is.
what would you say to somebody who's thinking about opening their home to foster children? What would you say? How do they know if they should do it or not? What are the first steps? Things like that.
Right. The first thing for me, that my first wrestling was coming to grips with what the scriptures were teaching me. James 1:27 is explicit, and then there are just passages even in the Old Testament where God says, if you don't care for these people, here's what I'm going to do to you. And that made me nervous. I'm a master's degree in this stuff, and I'm going, God, do
But
you
you're
mean that?
reformed. You believe in grace. What are you afraid of, Mitch?
I believe in grace, but I believe Jesus might get me if I don't do what he says. And I had to wrestle through, oh my gosh, this is here. This is a command of scripture. And I would say come to terms with that, be comfortable with that. And then number two, evaluate your parenting style and your marriage. You're gonna have to have a rock solid marriage and a solid set of parenting skills that you're going to have to learn or develop at some point, because you're going to, like I said, you're going to invite dysfunction into your home. And so your functionality has to trump the dysfunction, or it's going to be brutal. And so I would say evaluate that. And if you can,
Have you actually seen some situations that were difficult because the marriage or the parenting skill was not where it needed to be?
yeah, we've seen that across the board in our city, in our state, even at the board level of Division of Family and Children's Services, and even in our immediate family. We've seen where kids have come in and man, the parenting or the kid was just super difficult, and it did not work out, and it can create severe trauma, because trauma is part of this narrative. It's part of the equation. You're having traumatized kids, and that trauma can have an effect on other folks as well. And so you have to evaluate that. You have to count the cost and determine whether or not you can finish this out. And so I would say do those things. And if you can come to the end of that evaluation and say, I think we got this, then I would say jump, but expect a fight. I mean, it's difficult. It's not easy.
What impact did it have on your two sons? I'm just curious.
Yeah. I
Biologicals.
would, yeah, my biological sons, I would say the impact on them has been everything from a strong sense of personal pride that, wow, this matters. What we've done as a family has been important. And to having to wrestle through dealing with trauma, because, it's affected their lives in regard to having to process things that happen because their brother acts in a certain way. And so they've had a more difficult experience because they've had to learn to process hard things. And they, at a young age, had to learn hard things. They're curious and ask questions. Why did this happen? And so that it took a little sense of innocence away from them, because they learned very early that the world isn't as beautiful as it may look. And then I would say it taught them to see through a different set of ethnic eyes. They experience systemic racism and systemic isolation, because all of a sudden you're this mixed family, and they experience what it's like to be politely asked to leave. And so they've had to process some hard things.
I'm curious about this. I've heard of some people do foster care in hopes of adopting. Is that a
Yeah.
good thing? Is that a bad thing? I don't know.
Yeah,
What
I
could,
think it is. I think the ideal, and for us, the ideal is reunification. We want to see reunification where possible, because God's ideal is that family unit is healed and made right, that mom, dad, or mom and dad, and those children are reconciled and brought to wholeness. But there are many cases where that's not possible. And so both are necessary. I think if a family comes in looking only to adopt, it's going to be a difficult challenge and a most expensive challenge, because it's a very expensive proposition. If you're willing to be hurt and love with the understanding that love may leave you wounded, because you have to love that kid and love them enough to let them go back home, even though they call you mama or daddy. because it's better for them to go back home. If you can weather that emotional storm, that's a good thing. And it's needed for the kid, and it's incumbent upon us to be willing and able to absorb that wound for the betterment of that child and their family. So it's good to foster to adopt. It's good to foster and send home. And you just kind of have to know your tolerability or your toleration for being able to be hurt and surviving.
Mitch, what have you learned about God through all of this?
I would say he makes the call effective. If he whispers to your heart to do this, he will provide the emotional, material, and physical things necessary to do it. I think an initial fear was how we're going to pay for this, how we're going to practically now make room for 3 versus 2. How are we going to manage the issues of race and how we're going to manage being in the same town with a biological family? And he literally made a way for all of that. He has worked it out and is continuing to work it out. So if he whispers in my ear to do something, I've learned to do it because he's got ways and means that I will never see unless I step out into obedience. The resources are in the harvest, Bob. They really are.
I'm curious about this. What did you learn about Mitch Jolly in all of this, good and bad? What did you learn about yourself? What are you still learning about yourself?
Good. I'm a go first person. It really revealed my gifting and what I'm made to do more, made it clear, made me comfortable in my skin. That's about the only good thing. I learned a lot of bad things. I learned I'm short-tempered. I kind of knew that, but I didn't know how short-tempered. I learned that I'm prone to yell a lot and an awful lot.
You sound like a good Texan to me.
I'm telling you, it's that colonial rebellion in the 1700s. It's in me. It's in my blood. And so, I learned that I'm an impatient person, and it has uncovered my parenting flaws. That if it's easy, I'm good. If it's a challenge, it pushes me to levels that I didn't know I could go or needed to go. I've learned I can be just unnecessarily angry. A fool gives full vent to his anger, and I'm a fool. And so it's uncovered some of those things for me.
Mitch, what would you say about a church if the church as a whole wants to get involved in a foster care program? What are the steps they need to look at in order to do that?
I would say one of the first things the church needs to do is contact their local child services agency and ask what their needs are. They can have everything from yearly, we call it cheerful givers at the Division of Family and Children's Services, where each foster child receives Christmas presents and assists the foster family in providing those Christmas presents, because the per diem doesn't cover everything a child needs, and so much comes out of the pockets of foster parents that we allow, and we invite churches to come in and provide Christmas presents for those kids. And back to school is a great time for local churches to jump in with their local child services agency and provide back to school items, and that helps them to get their feet wet just a little bit and get to know some kids and foster families, and that's a good first step to see if they can kind of weather that storm of wanting to jump in and take a kid into their home. It's a fantastic opportunity.
Thank you.
And Bob, if you don't mind, I would even go so far as to say, check out Project 686, an incredible organization. You can partner with other churches that are involved in foster care. The Project 686 is an organization that helps equip churches to provide what we call communities of care. So basically what they would do is they would take their members and allow them to serve in places around a foster family to make their job easier. So they may not have a foster child and they may not have one in their church, but they can work with other churches and families to provide a community of care. And it's a great opportunity to get their feet wet.
This is such a broad field. Is there something I did not ask you that you would say, boy, I hope he asks me this because this needs to be addressed.
It is a broad field, Bob, and I think that for me, I did not want to jump in this deep initially. I thought, let's foster, adopt, let's get involved, let's do a few things around. And as God brought other people in our church to bear on the situation, we begin to see how deep and broad it is. And so this could be a series of conversations on everything from fostering to adopting to systemic issues. And so, I mean, you're even we have to deal with, again, systemic issues, whether it be ethnic issues, systemic ethnic issues, whether it be governmental systemic issues, bottlenecks from Tennessee to Georgia to Alabama to South Carolina that create flaws, and the need for us to get in even at the legislative level and make a difference. So there's just so much, and it is very broad, but you did a good job asking some really important questions.
Well, here's the last one. I know you believe in prayer. You and I both do.
Yeah.
We find ourselves in crazy places doing crazy stuff, not just home, but all over the world. What would you say we need to pray for Mitch Jolly the most right now? Three Rivers, Mitch, your family. What would you say? Boy, pray for me about this, or two or three things before we wrap.
Yeah. I would say pray that the Lord would allow us in this public square to be effective at balancing healing and speaking clearly and articulately, and as Paul wisely, about the gospel. Bob, you do this better than anybody, but being able to navigate a situation where that you're faithful in both of those is always a challenge. So pray that we navigate both of those well. I would say personally, pray that I'm a better father to teenage boys who have to live in this, and I want peace and all those good things. And my boys are amazing. I'm hard on myself because I want to be perfect. And I'm not. So pray that God uses me to launch, because I want those three arrows in my quiver to leave and extend this work far beyond my years, and that I would equip them well to do that.
Is incredible. Thank you so much, Mitch. And I want to thank all of you for joining us today. You know what? Some of you that are pastors, you may feel like a foster pastor. You don't have a home. You don't have a family. At GlocalNet, we're all about family. We travel the world together. We pray together. We weep together. We share our needs. Don't do it alone, especially not right now. So me and Mitch, we just invite you to the GlocalNet family. And if you're in the Georgia area and you like to go coon hunting, holler at Mitch. He'll take you and talk to you about all this good stuff. But I'm going to pray for you right now, Mitch, if that's all right.
Thank you, Bob.
All right. So, God, I just thank you so much for Mitch. I love him. I love his heart. I love his courage. I love his risk-taking. And I ask you to be with him. God, thank you that you've blessed and provided things for him that he didn't even ask, but you did it. And you did it because you had something significant you wanted to do that he didn't even dream about, God. And I love it when you do that. So, God, be with him as he tries to be a patient dad. Sometimes people get the idea we in the ministry, we're just, these perfect people. And it's not true, God. We're just as messed up as anybody else. So, Holy Spirit, just put your arms around Mitch, guide him and direct him. And Father, may all of us love orphans and foster children and be willing to take kids into our home. It's my prayer in your name, Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
God bless you, Mitch.
Thank you, Bob. Love you.
You bet. Great job.